All right, so for more on this story, joining me live from occupied East Jerusalem is Rateeba Natsheh. She's a member of the National Authority in Jerusalem. Natisha, thanks very much for joining us here on TRT World. I want to begin by asking you about Israeli attacks on journalists. I mean, they have already killed more than 150 journalists in the Gaza Strip. And now, as we shared with our audience earlier, they're clearly trying to attack journalists in the occupied West Bank as well.
Yes, we remember how they killed Shirin Abu Akleh because she tried to show up what is happening in Jenin before 2 years. And this is the policy of Israel to silence everyone who is trying to raising up the truth and show the people what is happening here in the West Bank. And the policies of the Israeli army, especially in the West Bank. This is not the first time. It's not because of the 7th of October. It's a policy that it's been happening since a very long time, and it become like more and more intensive these days because they want to hide these crimes that they are practicing in West Bank and Gaza. So yes, it's very reasonable, and we can understand how they think about silence everyone who is trying to speak up, not just as journalists or anyone who is active. And we saw how they arrested a lot of people just because they have like a tweet or publish something on the Facebook. So it's a policy of silence to make everyone silence and not to speak up.
But of course, more and more people are speaking up against Israeli crimes in Gaza, Israeli crimes in the occupied West Bank. And I just want to take this moment to thank all these journalists who are operating in such dire conditions in the occupied West Bank, clearly being intimidated by Israeli occupation forces over there. Now, Rateeba, I want to focus on the protests that we are seeing happen in Tel Aviv right now. In fact, we still have live pictures coming to us, as our audience can see on the right-hand side of their screens. Protesters have been out on the streets for hours now, despite calls by authorities to end the strike. But these protesters appear to be defiant. I wonder, do you think the tide is changing in Israel now, and this is perhaps the biggest challenge Netanyahu has faced since the 7th of October?
I think that Netanyahu is not listening for these Protestants or of these people. He's always saying that if he has like 50% of the people with him or 51% of the Israeli with him, that means that he is the majority and he can go on his policies. So I think it's not the case that Netanyahu is taking care about what is happening on the streets, or it makes some pressure on him. He have like ideologic thoughts about defining Israel exists, and he sees that this war is something very important and a turning point in the Israeli history. So it's about peeing or not peeing. And I think that he activated the Hannibal law since the first day of this war. That means that the reality of putting, releasing the hostages is not a real goal of this war by activating this kind of law, the Hannibal law in Israel. So I think that the people now understand what is happening in reality, and Netanyahu is not going for any kind of agreements for releasing these hostages because he have like biggest goals that he is running for. I think the Shabak and the security system in Israel put some very dangerous reports about a civil war that may be happened in Israel very near because of that. Because we have like 50% with Netanyahu policies and 50% with the people against these policies, and this gap between Netanyahu and his policies is becoming bigger and larger.
Certainly, the polarization in the country is unprecedented right now. And, you know, just to pick up on one point that you made, is I think it's not just the people who have understood that Netanyahu does not want a ceasefire deal. He does not want a hostage deal. It's the U.S. President Joe Biden as well. We just shared with our audience about a few moments ago how the U.S. President responded to a question from a journalist about Netanyahu. And he said, basically, he does not think Netanyahu wants a deal. He does not think Netanyahu is doing enough to secure a deal. So it seems to me even the U.S. has understood now that Netanyahu does not want the war in Gaza to end. Netanyahu does not want the hostages to be released.
I think that the U.S. Administration know this thing from the beginning of this war. They give him the green light to do whatever he wants. His speech in the Congress last month says very clearly that he knows more about what is right than the United States. So he is not going to listen for advices from the United States. He just wants the support, the weapons, and that's all, without any advice or any political distractions about what he must do and mustn't do in this war. So I think that it's not something that Biden discovered these days. I think it was clear from the beginning. Even in May, when Netanyahu himself give suggestions for a deal for the United States, and the United States take it, all of it, and then they started to say that Hamas will reject this proposal before they hear from Hamas. So Netanyahu is playing on all the sides, and he's trying to gain sometimes to do more and more realities on earth in Gaza Strip and the West Bank by reoccupied Gaza Strip and the West Bank by force.
Rateeba Natsheh, thanks very much for talking to us here on TRT World. I really appreciate your taking out the time.